joining me right now is the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. Of course, Secretary, the Secret Service is under the Department of Homeland Security. There are so many questions today about what happened on Saturday. What did the Secret Service do, not do? What kind of a failure was it in their planning and their protocol? How was that man able to get so close to assassinating a former president? What is, first and foremost, the latest you know about the man who did this? Do you think we will learn a motive, Secretary?
Kate, we will deliver answers to the American people to the fullest extent possible. That is our responsibility and not ours alone. As I hope you know, the FBI is conducting a criminal investigation, and President Biden has directed an independent review of the incidents on Saturday. But let me take a step back and echo President Biden's very, very important words. We are so relieved that former President Trump is okay. Our hearts break for the Comprador family. And of course, we pray for a speedy and safe, full recovery for those injured. We have to tone down the rhetoric in this country. We are in a heightened threat environment. Our incredible protective services adapt to that dynamic threat environment and make the changes that are necessary. That is indeed what an independent review is directed to do. Identify what occurred, make recommendations to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. We have a fail-proof responsibility.
But what level of failure was it? I mean, it's been called by some lawmakers a security failure at the highest level. We now know, just this morning, we learned the Secret Service director in her first public comments said this: the Secret Service is working with all involved federal, state, and local agencies to understand what happened, how it happened, and how we can prevent an incident like this from ever taking place again. But Secretary, do you call this a security failure on the part of the Secret Service?
An incident like this cannot happen. That is precisely why President Biden directed an independent review, so that review, its conclusions and its recommendations have the full confidence of the American public. We will carefully analyze in an independent and thorough fashion what occurred. Recommendations will be made. Those recommendations will be implemented. We are in a dynamic threat environment. We adapt to that dynamism every single day. Changes have been made to the Republican National Convention, just as the 18-month planning calls for. It calls for changes based on changes in the threat environment, and that is where we are now.
If you don't want to say, because a review is still happening, who failed in terms of the security around this rally, do you agree that it was a failure? You said this cannot happen, but first and foremost, before you make sure you make the changes, you have to acknowledge what a failure this was.
Kate, when I say that something like this cannot happen, we are speaking of a failure. We are going to analyze through an independent review how that occurred, why it occurred, and make recommendations and findings to make sure it doesn't happen again. I couldn't be clearer.
And I sincerely appreciate the clarity on this. I did want to ask you, because this has popped up. Republican Congressman Mike Walz, he said on social media on Saturday, and I'm going to read this for you because it does talk about you, Secretary. I have very reliable sources telling me that there have been repeated requests for stronger Secret Service protection for President Trump denied by Secretary Mayorkas. Your department has already pushed back on that, calling that absolutely false, but he is putting this on you. Can you respond to that, please?
Well, that's a baseless and irresponsible statement, and is one that is unequivocally false.
How confident are you now that the Secret Service are up to the task right now of protecting President Biden and former President Trump through the duration of this campaign now?
I am confident that they are. With respect to the Republican National Convention, The plan has been in place in development for 18 months. This is a responsibility that not only the United States Secret Service shoulders, but we work with our federal partners and state and local partners to ensure the safety and security of the Republican National Convention, the Democratic National Convention, and each and every campaign event.
Secretary, just finally, you said changes will be made, an independent review will happen. This cannot happen. Do you expect, or would you want to see people lose their jobs over what has just happened? Donald Trump had a near-death experience. One man is now dead, and 2 more people were shot, seriously shot and wounded and recovering now in a hospital.
Kate, I have full confidence in the leadership of the United States Secret Service. An independent review will make factual findings and recommendations based on those findings, and I look forward to studying those findings and recommendations and acting accordingly.
Secretary, I was literally just handed this. We have new reporting coming in from CNN's Whitney Wild that says a spokesman for U.S. Secret Service tells CNN the agency did not personally sweep the building where the attempted assassin shot former President Trump, but instead leaned on local law enforcement to conduct security at that location. Are you okay with that?
Kate, let me make 2 points. Number one, and let me repeat, that we will defer to an independent review of the facts to determine what those facts are and make findings and recommendations based on it. Number one. Number two, in campaign events, historically and now, including the conventions themselves, we work collaboratively with our federal partners as well as with our state and local partners. These are very, very significant undertakings, and we work seamlessly and closely with our partners across the national security, Homeland Security enterprise. I am going to defer to the independent review, and we will take those findings and recommendations and act on them accordingly.
Do you have any plans to speak yourself with former President Trump or his campaign in light of all of this?
Kate, President Biden, as he communicated to the American people, has been in touch with former President Trump. We are in close coordination with the Republican National Convention through the United States Secret Service to understand the threat landscape, to understand the security posture, and to take any recommendations and act on them. This is a mutual relationship. Communication works both ways. We are in close touch with the protectees whom we are responsible for. That is how the United States Secret Service operates historically and in an ongoing basis.
Secretary, thank you very much for coming on this morning. As so many questions and so much is still unknown, but in the midst of it, as it is still unfolding, thank you very much for coming on. Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas.